Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving into something pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
The origins of the Book of Mormon, a text that's incredibly important to millions around the world. And even if you're not familiar with it,
Right.
this could be a really interesting story. We're going to talk about ancient prophecies, angelic encounters,
Oh, yeah.
golden plates, and this is a text that really shaped religious history.
Yeah, definitely. For those maybe who aren't as familiar,
Yeah.
the Book of Mormon is considered the second most important event in the Latter-day Saint faith.
Oh, wow.
Second only to what they call the first vision, where
Yeah.
Joseph Smith claimed to have seen God the Father
Oh.
and Jesus Christ.
Okay, so that's setting a pretty high bar. So
Yeah.
what exactly
Right.
is the Book of Mormon? What's its purpose?
So Latter-day Saints believe that the Book of Mormon is a companion scripture to the Bible, another testament of Jesus Christ, but it also contains the history of an ancient civilization that was here in the Americas.
That they believe were descendants of Israelites that came here centuries before Christ.
So we're talking about a blend of ancient history and spiritual revelation tied to the Bible. It's a lot to unpack.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is that the appearance of the Book of Mormon was hinted at long before Joseph Smith even came on the scene.
Oh, really?
They believe there's prophecies in the Bible that actually foretell the coming forth of the Book of Mormon.
So people were expecting something like this even before it showed up.
Yeah. So, for instance, Isaiah speaks of a sealed book that would come forth in the latter days that would be instrumental in gathering Israel. And then you have Ezekiel, who talks about the stick of Judah, which represents the Bible, and then the stick of Ephraim, which they interpret as the Book of Mormon.
Got it.
And those two sticks coming together symbolizes the uniting of God's people.
That idea of a gathering, what does that mean exactly in this context?
So the gathering of Israel is a major theme that you see throughout the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
And it can refer to both a physical gathering, so the migration of God's people to a specific location, and it can also refer to a spiritual gathering, which is the unification of people from all nations under the banner of Christ.
Okay, so we have these prophecies in place, setting the stage for something big. So where does Joseph Smith come into this story?
So according to Latter-day Saint accounts, it all starts with a pretty dramatic angelic encounter back in 1823. Joseph was just a teenager at the time, and he was seeking spiritual guidance when he was visited by an angel named Moroni.
An angel? Okay. Yeah. This is already getting good.
Yeah.
So what did this angel tell him?
He told Joseph that God had a very special mission for him. Which was to translate and publish a book of ancient scripture. And this wasn't just any book. This book was inscribed on golden plates.
Oh, wow.
That had been hidden away for centuries.
Hidden golden plates with ancient scripture on them?
Yes.
This is like something straight out of an adventure movie.
And that's not all.
Oh, wow.
Moroni revealed that these plates were buried on a hill called Cumorah, which was not far from where Joseph lived. But he couldn't just go and get them right away. He had to wait 4 years. And during those 4 years, Moroni would visit him every year and give him further instructions to help prepare him for this task.
So it was more than just finding and translating. It was like an apprenticeship. What kind of things was he learning during that time?
So during that time, he was learning about the language on the plates. He was receiving spiritual preparation. And he was also being instructed on the importance of this mission that he had.
So then after the 4 years, he finally got to go.
That's right.
And get these plates.
So he went to the hill Cumorah in 1827. And he retrieved the plates. And from this point on, he's facing pressure and even danger because many people were after these plates.
People wanted to steal them?
Yes.
What for?
Well, some were just driven by curiosity, some by greed. Others felt threatened by the claims that Joseph was making. And they saw these plates as a way to discredit him.
So now he's got these plates. He's got to protect them. He's got to translate them. This is a huge
Exactly. Right. And it got to the point where he and his wife, Emma, had to relocate to Harmony, Pennsylvania to try and find a safer place to do the translation work.
So I'm curious about how this translation actually happened. I imagine this wasn't just cracking open a dictionary.
You're exactly right. Joseph didn't translate in the traditional sense. He claimed it was done through divine revelation. Aided by instruments that were provided by God.
What kind of?
Like the Urim and Thummim.
The Urim and Thummim, what are those?
So they're described as seer stones. They were tools
Okay.
that facilitated the process of revelation, and they would help him understand the language that was on the plates.
So we have a young man guided by an angel,
Right.
translating ancient scripture through divine revelation.
Yes.
This is a pretty remarkable story, but how could anybody know
Yeah.
if this was an accurate translation? Was it just...
That's where the witnesses come in.
Okay.
So Joseph wasn't the only one who claimed to have seen the plates.
Okay.
He actually chose 11 individuals to be witnesses of the existence of these plates.
So there are others who are claiming to have seen these golden plates.
Yeah, and their testimonies became crucial to the Book of Mormon's history.
Okay.
So the first 3 witnesses were Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris.
Okay, and what exactly did these witnesses say?
Right, so they claimed that they not only saw the plates in the engravings,
okay,
but they also heard the voice of God testifying to the authenticity of the plates.
Wow. They were really putting themselves out there.
Absolutely. They faced a lot of ridicule and persecution.
Yeah.
But they remained really steadfast in their testimonies.
Yeah. So we have prophecies, angelic visits, golden plates, divine translation,
Right.
and now witnesses. This is quite a story. What about the actual content of the book?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting.
So last time we left off with Joseph finishing up the translation of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the end of the story.
No, not at all.
He still had to figure out how to get this thing published.
Exactly. And that was not an easy task back then.
I can imagine in the 1820s printing 5,000 copies of a book.
Yeah.
That must have been incredibly expensive.
It was astronomical.
Yeah, this is way before Kickstarter and Amazon and all that. So how did they even finance this whole project?
Well, this is where the story gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Remember Martin Harris, one of the 3 witnesses?
Yeah.
Well, he had so much faith in the Book of Mormon that he actually mortgaged his farm.
151 acres of prime farmland.
Wow.
To raise the money for printing.
Talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
It really shows how strongly they believed in what they had.
So thanks to Martin Harris,
Yeah.
Joseph was finally able to get the Book of Mormon out there.
That's right. In March of 1830, the first edition was published in Palmyra, New York.
I can only imagine what that must have been like. I mean, this wasn't just any other book. This was a book that was claiming to be a New Testament of Jesus Christ translated from ancient golden plates.
Yeah, the reaction was very mixed.
Yeah, I bet there was a lot of excitement, but also a lot of controversy.
Absolutely. Some people were completely captivated by it.
Okay.
Others were very skeptical.
Sure.
And others were very hostile toward it because they saw it as a threat to their own beliefs.
Yeah. I can see how a new scripture alongside the Bible could definitely ruffle some feathers.
So what was it about the book that drew people in?
Well, a lot of people were really drawn to the book's emphasis on Jesus Christ and his teachings. The book, just like the Bible, speaks about his life, his ministry, his atonement, and his resurrection.
Can you talk a little bit more about the atonement? I think that's something that a lot of people hear but don't fully understand.
Yeah, so the atonement is really at the heart of Christianity.
Okay.
And the Book of Mormon goes into great depth about it. Essentially, it refers to Christ's sacrifice on the cross.
Okay.
And Christians believe that his suffering and death atoned for the sins of all mankind.
So it's about redemption through Christ's sacrifice and reconciliation with God.
Right, and the Book of Mormon talks about the implications of that sacrifice.
Okay.
Both for individuals and for the whole world.
So we have this new scripture with Christian theology, but also with stories of ancient American civilizations.
Right.
What kind of impact did it have after it was published?
Well, the Book of Mormon quickly became kind of the cornerstone of the Latter-day Saint movement.
Yeah.
They saw it not as a replacement for the Bible, but as a companion to it.
A companion.
That offers additional insights and revelations.
Okay, so how is the Book of Mormon viewed by Latter-day Saints today?
So for them, it's not just a historical text. It's a living scripture that really guides their faith, their practices, and how they see God.
So it's still relevant in their daily lives.
It's a major part of their identity.
It's really amazing to think about how a book published back in 1830 can still have such an impact on people today.
Right, and while the Book of Mormon obviously has its devout followers.
Yeah.
It's also been the subject of a lot of scrutiny and debate.
Right. The controversy. We can't talk about the Book of Mormon without acknowledging that there's also some pushback.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that critics tend to bring up?
So one of the big things that people point to is the lack of archaeological evidence to support the Book of Mormon's claims. So the book describes civilizations that had these complex societies, large cities, and advanced agriculture.
Yeah.
But so far, there haven't been any archaeological discoveries that can confirm those descriptions.
Yeah, I can see how if these were such advanced civilizations, we would expect to find something more concrete.
Exactly. And that's basically the argument that a lot of critics make.
Okay.
They say that because there's no archaeological evidence, that the Book of Mormon must be fiction.
So how do believers respond to that?
So they often say that the American continents are vast.
Okay.
And that archaeological work is ongoing.
Right.
So they basically say that just because we haven't found evidence yet doesn't mean that it's not out there.
So it comes down to faith.
In part, yeah.
Eventually, this evidence will be found.
Right. And some people point to potential archaeological sites that they think might be connected to the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
But these interpretations are often debated even within the scientific community.
So this archaeological debate is definitely not settled.
Real.
Are there any other criticisms that are often brought up?
Another big one is about the authorship of the book.
Okay.
So some critics point out that there are similarities in language, themes, and even narrative structures between the Book of Mormon and other works from the 19th century.
Interesting.
And so they suggest that Joseph Smith might have actually been inspired by these sources.
So they're basically saying he plagiarized parts of the book.
Yeah, they're saying that certain phrases, ideas, and storytelling techniques in the Book of Mormon are just a little too similar to other works from his time period.
That's a pretty serious accusation. So what do people who believe in the Book of Mormon, how did they respond to that?
They say that the Book of Mormon has a very unique and complex structure, that it's internally consistent, and that it has this really profound spiritual message.
Yeah.
And they say that any similarities to other works are purely coincidental or superficial. And that they don't take away from the divine origins of the book.
It's fascinating to me how a book from almost 200 years ago can still spark so much debate.
I know, it's really interesting.
And discussion today.
Yeah, it speaks to the enduring power of belief.
Right.
And how people are constantly searching for truth.
And it really highlights how faith and history can sometimes clash.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good reminder that even in our modern world, we're still trying to figure out these big questions about faith, historical evidence, and what truth really is.
And I think that's a really key takeaway from what we've talked about today. Whether you see the Book of Mormon as an ancient record or a creation from the 19th century, I think it really encourages us to think critically, to examine what we believe, and to have respectful conversations with people who might see things differently.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Book of Mormon, what do you think is...
You know, for me, I think the most remarkable thing is its lasting legacy.
Okay.
Over 180 million copies in circulation.
Wow.
Translated into over 100 languages.
That's incredible.
That's a real testament to how powerful its message is. And how it's able to connect with people from all different backgrounds.
I completely agree. This is a story that I think is still unfolding. It's sparking faith. It's fueling debates.
Right.
And it's really pushing us to grapple with these big questions about life.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it. The Book of Mormon, regardless of what you believe, it invites us all on a journey of discovery and reflection.
It's been fascinating talking to you today.
It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you learned something new.
Yeah, and remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much information out there.
Absolutely.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and ultimately come to your own conclusions.
Great advice. Until next time, keep diving deep. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of the Book of Mormon. And before the break, we were talking about some of the controversy.
Yeah, pushback.
Yeah, so let's get into it. What are some of the main criticisms that people have?
Well, one of the biggest things is that there's no archaeological evidence
Okay.
to back up what the Book of Mormon claims.
Okay.
So the book talks about these civilizations
Right.
with these really complex societies, big cities, advanced farming techniques.
Yeah, and we haven't found anything.
And we haven't found anything yet
Yeah.
that really matches up with that.
I can see how that would be a problem.
Right.
If these were such advanced civilizations, you'd think we'd find something.
You'd think there'd be something more concrete.
Right.
And that's kind of the main argument that critics make.
Right.
They say, because there's no archaeological evidence, the book can't be real.
So how do believers respond to that?
Well, they often point to the fact that the American continents are huge.
Right.
And that archaeological work is still ongoing.
It's true. We haven't excavated everything.
Exactly. So they say just because we haven't found anything yet doesn't mean it's not out there.
So it kind of comes down to faith
that
eventually this evidence will be found?
Exactly. And some people even point to certain sites
Okay.
that they think could be connected to the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
But even those are debated among scientists.
So this whole archaeology thing is far from over.
Yeah, it's a very complex issue.
Are there other criticisms that come up a lot?
Yeah. Another big one is about who actually wrote the book.
Okay.
So critics have pointed out that there are some similarities in the language, the themes, even the way the story's structured between the Book of Mormon and other writings from the 1800s.
Okay, so they're saying it's not as unique as...
Right. They're implying that Joseph Smith might have gotten some of his ideas from other places.
So basically they're accusing him of plagiarism.
Yeah. Essentially, they're saying that some of the phrases, the ideas, even some of the writing style in the Book of Mormon is a little too close to other stuff that was around at the time.
That's a pretty serious claim. So how do supporters of the Book of Mormon, how do they respond to that?
Well, they argue that the Book of Mormon actually has a really unique structure.
Okay.
That it's internally consistent.
Okay.
And that it has a very powerful spiritual message.
Okay.
And they say that any similarities to other books are basically just coincidence.
Okay.
Or maybe just on the surface.
Gotcha.
They say it doesn't take away from the idea that the book came from God.
This is really fascinating to me.
It is.
That a book written almost 200 years ago can still create so much discussion and debate.
Yeah, and I think it really shows that people are still searching for truth and trying to understand what's real.
It really highlights how faith and history sometimes bump up against each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that even today, with all the information we have, we're still struggling with these big questions about faith, historical evidence, and what truth really means.
And I think that's a really important takeaway from our deep dive.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter if you think the Book of Mormon is an ancient record or something written in the 1800s.
Right.
I think it challenges us to really think critically about things.
Yeah.
To question what we believe.
To examine our own beliefs.
Exactly. And to be open to talking to people.
Yeah.
Even if they have different viewpoints.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our exploration of the Book of Mormon, what do you think is the most remarkable thing about it?
I think the most remarkable thing is how long it's lasted.
Okay.
You know, over 180 million copies.
That's what.
Translated into over 100 languages.
Yeah.
It just shows how powerful the message is.
It really does.
And how it speaks to people from all walks of life.
I think you're right. It's a story that's still unfolding. Yeah. And it makes people think about these big questions we all have.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, you know?
Yeah.
No matter what you believe,
the
Book of Mormon makes you question things.
Yeah.
Makes you reflect.
Think differently.
Exactly.
Well, it's been great talking with you today.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to everyone for joining us for this deep dive into the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
I hope you learned something new.
I hope so. And remember, this is just the start. There's a ton of information out there.
Yeah.
So keep learning, keep asking questions.
Absolutely.
And come to your own conclusions.
That's great advice. And until next time, keep diving deep.